So this is the third lab that we're doing that we're studying animals. The study of animals in general is called zoology. It's spelled zoo, Z-O-O, and then ology, zoology. Um, and zoology is the study of animals, and we have just been taking like a quick survey over all of the animals. There is an entire semester-long course in zoology here at Cerritos College if you're interested in learning more. But now we're on the third lab, and we are going to be talking about the things that are more closely related to us. So my first question to you is, which of these animals that I'm going to show you do you think is most closely related to you? Here we've got the flatworm. That was our little planaria, right? And then we have got this, this is what a sand dollar looks like. A sand dollar right here. That's what it looks like when it's still alive. This is something called a sea squirt. And they're kind of bags that filter feed. And this is a shrimp. And we know now that that is an arthropod. So out of these things, what do you think is most closely related to you, to a human? And it might surprise you to learn that this is the one that is most closely related to you. This bag that's made out of cellulose and filter feeds and doesn't even really have a central nervous system, that is more closely related to you than any of these other animals. The second most closely related to you is the sea star. That's a sand dollar, but sand dollars and sea stars are in the same family. And I hope to explain why to you in these lectures. All righty. So we have gone through all of these animals. No, none of these animals. These are the animals that we're doing in today's lab. Oh my gosh, there's really a lot to do. And by the way, there is really a lot to do in this week's lab. So make sure that you complete it all, because all of these points are really going to add up. So we're going to start with tunicates. Now, why are all of these animals closely related to you, right? Well, the answer is that all of them are protostomes. Where's the slide here we go. All of those other ones were protostomes, and these are all deuterostomes. Let me remind you that when you are just a hollow ball of cells, very, very early in your development, and then a hole starts being punched in, and someday it goes all the way through the center, which end becomes a mouth and which end becomes an anus, that determines whether you're a protostome or a deuterostome. And all of these things are either protostomes or before there were stomes at all, okay? But these things, the sand dollars and sea stars and sea cucumbers, along with fish and things that are more recognizable, these are all deuterostomes, right? Here we go, deuterostomes. I don't know why it's doing that. Here we go, deuterostomes. So we're going to start just with the earliest deuterostomes. And the earliest deuterostomes are sea stars. We're not supposed to call them starfish anymore, okay? Sea stars, sea urchins, sand dollars, sea cucumbers. These are the earliest deuterostomes. Now, people argue about, do these have radial symmetry or do they not, right? In terms of development, they've got bilateral symmetry. Now, it's true that when you look at a sand dollar, or a sea urchin, this is a sea urchin, this is a starfish feeding, this is a sea cucumber. Not all of them are obviously bilaterally symmetrical, okay? However, they all have got larvae that swim and look quite a bit like a little tadpole and is definitely bilaterally symmetrical. Okay? Now, these are all called echinoderms, and echino means prickly or spiny, and derm means skin. And all of these things do indeed have spiny skin. Now, some of them, like our sea urchin here, well, that's got really, really, really spiny skin. Some of them, like this guy here, the sea cucumber, wouldn't feel that sharply spiny, but does still have spines when you look at it through a microscope. Okay, these are all organisms that live in the ocean. There are no freshwater echinoderms. I don't know why. Every so often when I'm lecturing to you, I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. I need to look that up. Okay, so, all right, good. So remember that, that the reason that these guys are in this section instead of back when we were doing the jellyfish is because these things are deuterostomes. And deuterostomes makes them closer on the evolutionary tree of life to us than anything else that we've studied so far. Sand dollars, they wedge themselves in the sand, and they are covered with little tiny moving little feet-like things that will grab little bits of protozoa and algae out of the ocean, and then they will grab it and they will hand it one to another, to another, to another, until it gets to their mouths. So that's how they feed. All of the echinoderms have a vascular system that uses seawater. So they don't have blood vessels that carry blood. They have a vascular system that carries seawater. And they will pump water into these little hydraulic feet. And then when they pull some of the water out, that is going to create a little suction, which allows all of these little suction cup feet to do a really good job of hanging on to surfaces. This is the hydraulic feet of a sea star, or what you might call a starfish, but all of the echinoderms have got a water vascular system. And look at how spiny they are on the surface, echinoderms. So this is to remind you why they are closely related to us. Here's that early hollow ball of cells, and then you can imagine there's like a little ghostly little finger there that is pushing up. And where this ends up going all the way through, in all of the protostomes, this first hole will be the mouth. And in the echinoderms and in us, the chordates, it's the second hole that becomes the mouth, and this first hole becomes the anus. I know, seems like a little detailed factoid, but yeah, it ends up being really important. All right. So what happens if you cut a sea star into pieces? Sea stars, starfish, are remarkable that you can actually cut them into many pieces, but as long as each piece has got this little segment of the central portion of the starfish, it'll grow into a whole new starfish. And if you give it long enough, you can't tell which ones have been cut into pieces and which ones haven't by looking at them. They will grow back that entirely normal. So that's a remarkable thing about the sea stars. Now, let's look at the chordates. I've got a different image for you to look at on the chordates because the chordates are really complicated. The chordates are called chordates because they have a structure called a notochord. A notochord. Now, the notochord is not a spinal cord. No. The notochord is like a solid tube of tissue that kind of supports the whole body, and it is ventral to the earliest spinal cord. All of the chordates, all of the chordates, they have got a dorsal hollow spinal cord. Dorsal hollow. Dorsal means towards their back. Hollow means it's got a hole in the center. Hollow spinal cord. A dorsal hollow spinal cord. sorry, a dorsal hollow spinal cord. Now, that's not the same thing as the notochord. Do I have a picture here? Yes, here I do. Okay, so this is a very, very early chordate. And let me show you the difference between the notochord and the dorsal hollow spinal cord. By the way, a question like this could easily be on the lab finals, so pay attention. So here's going to be this guy's little brain someday. I don't know if he's got much of a brain yet. And this is the spinal cord. We've got spinal cords, right? Now, this thing that is just, I don't know what's going on. This thing right here, that is the notochord. The notochord is a very early structure in development. The notochord, as we get up to things like fish, that notochord is going to end up becoming your backbones, okay? So the spinal cord is going to be the spinal cord. The notochord is going to become your vertebrae, your backbones. All of the chordates have a dorsal hollow nerve cord, that's going to be the spinal cord, and they all have a notochord at least at some stage in their embryonic development. Not sea stars, not sand dollars, not sea urchins. Now we're talking about the chordates. What else do they have? They have got pharyngeal slits. The pharyngeal slits end up becoming the gills of things like fish. They are only present for a while in humans while we're still inside of the mom. And as we develop, those pharyngeal slits develop into lots of interesting different structures, but they are there during part of our development. And all of the chordates have got a post-anal tail. So, you know, like things like earthworms, their anus is at the tip of their tail, not in the chordates. In the chordates, their anus is down here, but the tail, if the animal still has it when they're an adult, that tail is after the anus. By the way, something I want to mention, really watch the crash course video on chordates. It's a little bit long, but it's really good, okay? So you should know that these are the 4 qualities that a chordate will have at some point in their life. Now, some of those that we will talk about, particularly the tunicates, the ones that are empty bags, they only have this kind of a shape while they are a larva. They hatch out of their eggs. They kind of look like this thing we're looking at here. They swim somewhere. They settle down. They lose the notochord. They lose the nerve cord. They have modified pharyngeal slits. They lose the postanal tail, and they become these bags that are related to us, right? So all of the chordates have a notochord. We're going to talk about the earliest chordates that have a notochord, but they don't really have skulls yet, okay? All right. So here are the 2 chordates that are weird. These are called tunicates, and tunicates are also known as sea squirts. And can you believe that thing is related to you? That's crazy, right? Here's something interesting, could be on the final. They are mostly made out of cellulose. Well, that's really weird. It's really weird because there are no other animals in the animal kingdom that make that carbohydrate cellulose. Cellulose is made by plants all the darn time, but this is the only animal that makes cellulose, which is weird. Now, technically, they've got a complete digestive tract. They suck in water here, they push out water there, and then they filter out all the nutritious goodiness. Now, you might say, there's no way that's a chordate. Yes, as an adult, it looks like that, but as a larva, it kind of looked like a tadpole, and I'll show you a picture of it. This is another really weird chordate. These guys are called lancelets. Now, lancelets, you might guess that they were a chordate because they look at least vaguely fish-like. They don't really have a brain. They don't have a skull yet, but they do have a notochord. They do have a hollow dorsal nerve cord. They do actually have what is considered to be a head. It has got these little tentacles that are grabbing things out of the water. They don't have eyes. They don't really have a brain yet. They do have a mouth, okay? And they are just there in the sand, grabbing little things out of the seawater, and that's how they live. They do swim around when they are larvae. These are chordates, but they are invertebrate chordates. Vertebrate would mean technically you've got vertebrae. These are invertebrate chordates, okay? And look at this. This is an adult blue sea squirt. They're kind of fluorescent, aren't they? Now, they don't have brains. They don't even have a central nervous system. We don't even think they've got heads. But look, this is what they looked like when they were just hatched out of their eggs. They were very small, but bilaterally symmetrical, had a dorsal hollow nerve cord, had a notochord, had a postanal tail. So technically, they were chordates back in the day. All righty, we will pick up there. Oh, here's what they look like. The tunicate, the tunicate larva. Look, they've got little tiny eyes. They've got tails. They've got notochord. They really do look like a little tiny tadpole. Not as complicated as a tadpole, but very similar to it. And then they settle down and they become these bags of cellulose. Zoology is kind of cool. All righty. So we will pick up with the vertebrates next.